Hey guys, I'm here at work late night. I just finished off a very cool demo and interview with the two Robocorp guys, Ossi and Antti. Ossi just smashed the RPA challenge in less than a second. And here we will go to see how, and we will talk about the Robocorp meanwhile. I edited out a lot of pieces, so blame me if we missed something. We will have that in the final video. But I just thought that it was so cool, so I wanted to show you that. If you can help us, hit that thumbs up button if you really like this video. That will help both Robocorp and me. Now, let's get to the video.
We wanted to automate RPA challenge, so I can add the settings cell that was here. So it's just settings, and then I can import libraries that I have. So we had that RPA browser. That's the one we ship as a built-in library, and then we can make write those keywords that these tasks are made of. All of these libraries, they bring those keywords, and then you can make your own. So if we write keywords, we can write open RPA challenge page named keyword, and then we can open the page with open available browser.
Some things to notice here is that when Ossi is typing the keyword, the open available browser, that tells what to do, and then that URL is the yeah, we have auto completion there, but URL is the argument, and that's separated by two or more spaces. So this is something that is different in Robo framework. It has a syntax called tabular syntax, and that means that you separate arguments and keywords with two or more spaces. That might get it'll take some time to get used to if you're new to that, but that's one of the quirks that the tool has.
Can I ask you a couple of questions, Ossi?
Yeah. Sure.
What exactly did we do here in settings? We had a library called RPA browser. What are we doing here?
This is importing the library. So all of these keywords that this browser library has, they're now available to use in this file. So
okay. And then we have the keywords underneath here.
Yeah. So when we run this cell, it creates this in lab. It creates this widget that you can use to run that keyword.
Sure.
But
on the right hand side, we're gonna have a keyword explorer that's still under development. But it's a way to search for keywords.
So this sidebar here, we started recently building this keyword explorer feature. So if I search for open available browser, it shows these keywords that are now imported from this RPA browser library. So now if I execute this keyword, it will start my browser session here. And one thing to note is that even if this is Selenium with all of the normal Selenium hassle, we do all of the like WebDriver handling for you, so you don't need to install WebDrivers and that sort of stuff. So all of the dependencies of this robot is handled by lab.
Sorry, I mean, if somebody's familiar with Selenium and playing around with that, they'll appreciate this fact that they don't actually have to hassle with the WebDrivers and versioning those and getting those right. This is all handled under the hood, and you sometimes, even I sometimes do it when I lose the kind of appreciation to the amount of work that this tool already does for the user. But if you try to use like Selenium out of the box, like as a Python thing, you'll end up having to deal with something called WebDrivers, and it's not always fun.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with that concept, then you'll be happy with these features. But yeah, so this open now a browser session here. So the RPA challenge is, well, as I think we all know, it's this downloading this Excel file and parsing some data and filling these forms with it.
And the challenge is that these fields, they change in position like for each run,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. But we can, like, depending on how you want to implement this, we're going to do it now in a way where we download this Excel and like parse the data as part of the robot. So we're not going to like pre-download it or anything. So we can write whatever keyword we want next, and then downloading files, we can do it through the browser, through like clicking links and stuff. But then we can just with an HTTP library that we have, we can just download files from a URL. So if we say download and that URL, click the button now. Well, import the library and then download it. Then it downloaded this file here, this Excel file, which is now here in the robots here.
So we can refer to it directly here in our robot.
Yeah, it's now on the same workspace, so you can just say, so if we other libraries that we ship with, if we want to edit the files, Excel files directly, read them.
Will these libraries, if I need to, will these cost me additional money, or are those free as well?
No, these are fully open source. These are in GitHub. If you have like any issues, you can post issues there. If you make some changes or something in the future, then you can just make a pull request. They're all available.
Sure.
So if I open the challenge Excel file as a workbook and then read the worksheet, but yes, so we can read the worksheet as a table, and then we can return values from this keyword. So we can return the sheet. So we'll also see that if we then read the data, it'll show the table that it read here as a normal table. And you can see that in this case, there's no column headers here. The first row is actually the column data. So if you looked at here in the keyword explorer, it should say there's a header argument. Yes.
We're working on the formatting of the documentation.
Yes.
It seems like the interface seems really easy to understand and look at. It will just be that I have to learn these short code snippets, and then I can probably run.
But now I added that header true argument there. So if I read again, it has those columns correctly in the data, so that we can refer things to the columns with the names. So
now we have the data, and the challenge is that we need these data, like iterate the rows one by one and then fill it in here in these fields, right?
Yes.
Will that be an easy task with Robocorp, or do we have to write a lot of code?
Iterating, inputting data, that's quite easy. I think the hard part of this challenge that it makes it tricky is the selectors that you need for those fields. We then try fill form data, make that sort of keyword, and inputs text is the thing we want to do. So we need a locator and we need tools, because that's what I'm used to. And I'm used to.
This is like how I automated in AutoHotkey back in the days, open the.
Yeah, and then you can write normal XPath selectors that you can get out of the browser. That I think a lot of developers are like familiar with, that have like that like website automation or website building knowledge. But that's also like I mentioned. There is a reason why we're building this like abstraction on top of it, so to help you get started with these. But in the end, even if they would use this UL locators features to create these selectors, it does show you what type of XPath it generated, and you could always like use either, or you will like learn that workflow as you go along. So it's just a label which contains role in company, and then we go one level up and take the inputs. I think that's what yeah, that's that's pretty much the content. And then if there's some.
Can you take us through like the whole line? What are we actually doing here? We have just from the input text.
Yes. Input text takes any sort of browser selector and then puts text into that. And this is an XPath selector. So it's finding a label that contains the text role in company.
And you know that the selector contained role and company because you looked where?
There's this label here. I inspected this element. There's a label with text content role in company. And then next to it on the same level, there's an input field. So I'm going up one level of the DOM and then selecting the input. That's how I look at it, how building this stuff like manually. So if I run that, then it inputted the text test into that there.
So you can test it on the fly quite quickly.
Yeah. So I have a browser session open here, so I can just edit this, run this again, edit this, run this again. So even if I was a bit unsure what this syntax would be, what the structure of the page would be, this iteration is so fast. I don't have to like recompile and rerun and then sift through some log that what happened actually. I can just see instantly what happened here.
That's quite clever. Oh,
and then
actually.
So another part of like being like just text based, we don't need to care about types or stuff here. So I could make this into like a more generic keyword. I would like fill form. I could make this into a film form field type keyword, and I can give it into give some arguments for it. So I could give like an argument variable name for the like field name for what the field is called, and then what the text is that we want to fill in. And instead of hard coding here that it's role in company, I can just put this variable here. And then when you call this keyword with an argument, it'll fill that in there, and then it's like dynamic. And then it's the same for this text here. So it generated this widget here in the notebook when I reran it. So it noticed that it has some arguments, that it made some input fields here. So if I change this to address and then 1, 2, 3 and click this button, it'll run it with those arguments and build that in there.
I think that's pretty cool.
Can you repeat that step? I was just taking a note. And
yes, of course. So when I added these arguments here for the keyword, and I re-evaluated this cell, it creates these widgets from these keywords, and it noticed that it has these arguments as inputs. So it made these input cells here.
Oh, nice.
And so you can test out like different inputs interactively here. So then when we have this like row of data here with these columns, we can just make a bigger one, like fill row of data type thing. And we call this keyword as we just made. And we just, for like each of these columns, we have like first name. And what we could take in is one row of data. So let's take an argument. It's a row. And let's actually start from the beginning. So we have this table of like this 2D data. And we wanna fill all rows of data. So we can loop over that data. So it's just a for loop. We take a row out of it, and we iterate over that sheet of data. So for every row of the sheet, we can just go through that, loop through that table. And we can get the data from the same keyword that we made earlier. We data from Excel. We get the sheet out of it. And then we can loop through that table. We can just quickly, as a middle step, we can run this with just logging the rows. So if we take a look at the robot log, it just loops through all of the rows, logs what each row is, and then logs that row. It does nothing else at this point, but it just iterates over as many rows as we just happen to have in that table. But instead of logging, we can now create a keyword that fills all of that data. So it's just for each column that we had, we can just, how many columns we had, like 8?
7?
Whatever. 7. Yeah, so.
Ossi, now be completely honest with me. How many hours of practicing do I need to do before I can be as good as you here?
Honestly, not that many. I've been dogfooding lab a lot less than I should have. Like I said, I usually write robot text with my favorite code editor that I won't plug here, but I write it just text-based, like almost always. And like,
is it Vim?
No, it's Sublime Text. But like I've been now trying to use lab a bit more, but this is a learning opportunity for us both, let's say.
Cool.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I kind of also like to advocate, that while we do develop lab, every developer has their favorite editor at the same time as well. I like VS Code myself. I do think that lab has this tight iteration loop that can be really powerful, and that's why I tend to build with lab. Sometimes if I do something straightforward and simple, I just use VS Code. I like the speed of it, and I like kind of where I know everything works there from my previous experience. But we can still like build the same way and use the code.
Cool.
Yeah. So those are like the names of those fields, and then we can. When we iterate over this table, we can access those like columns because they have names. We can just, so we have a row, and then the name of that column is like, we can access it like that. Sort of how would you access a dictionary in Python? This is like the same syntax. So even if you don't know Python, this is, I think, quite readable, and then you could transfer those skills. But
I think what's gonna take you the most time is learn some of the syntax. The specifics in Robo Framework, going through some of the examples,
yes.
How to access that element in that row and so forth. That's gonna take the most time in my view. And we also, by the way, actively working and trying to improve the syntax of Robo Framework. So we are pretty heavily investing in making Robo Framework itself better, and we are in active discussion also, like financially sponsoring the development of Robo Framework. So we are bringing new features into the core open source tool itself.
Yeah, it's a pretty mature project at this point. I can't remember which year it started exactly, but still, Antti knows. But it still has active development, extremely active developer Slack for Robot Framework itself. So it's not sort of like a stale project. It's really
definitely
like going
not.
forward.
There's gonna be a 4.0 release coming to beta pretty soon, and there's new and exciting functionality there that we have helped bring along. This is the painstaking part of every form filling challenge, where you've done the first element and you need to repeat it across multiple ones.
Yeah. So I assume this is correct. I'm filling those fields and clicking a button that has a text submit. Yes. So if I try to press that, it iterates all of the rows and presses submit, it should, yes, it'll fill data. We didn't start the challenge yet. I didn't press the start button yet.
No.
But
it looks promising. It did what it should, right?
Yeah, it did seem to do what we wanted to do. Well, we can talk about optimizing soon, but let's try to just run it first. So let's also click the button start in the middle.
Maybe we should click the start like after we read the data, or what do you think?
That's a good point. Yes, that's a small optimization that we can do.
Not to ruin your optimization in a minute.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So what did I call this keyword? We can collect this into an executable task finally then, but if you can rerun it again, so you'll fill up those fields at an acceptable pace.
So that was 7 seconds. Really nice, Ossi. Now we will optimize, but before we'll do that, be sure to hit that subscribe button to get the final video and a lot of other cool RPA videos.
Instead of having this input text which simulates typing text, I made a, I keep pressing my buttons. Please press form field fast. I made this sort of keyword with the same arguments. And this is actually a pattern that, like in the test automation side, we used quite a lot, is that your whole team making things, they don't need to have that like deep Python knowledge. But if you have people who have that, they can write those libraries which have these keywords that they can use in Robot. And then the developers can like write the low level code that interfaces with some sort of legacy system or whatever. And then your like RPA developers or test automation developers, they can use these high level keywords to write robot scripts, and they don't need to know the nitty-gritty of Python syntax.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if you have let's say you're in a bank and you have a lot of business specific applications that you need to automate, you would typically have your center of excellence develop a set of libraries that are specific to your business apps, and you would just share it in a repository with everyone, and you would code in these high level keywords like fill rows and read data from Excel and so forth, similar ones, but they would like operate on your like internal apps.
Yeah. So, well, this is the nitty-gritty part of it that the normal RPA developer might not need to understand, but somebody else might implement as part of the organization.
I think this is cool enough to demo.
But maybe Mario will get a little bit sad that we are after his record now. But let's go.
Actually, I think this is Mario used this in the example.
No, okay.
Some further optimizations, but I won't go into that. It's a secret. But yeah,
I thought everything was open, Ossi. And now you're telling me that you have...
Okay, I can tell you. I did the same thing, but I pre-calculated JavaScript into one thing that I just sent to the browser, and the browser did the whole thing, and then I just collected the results. So I did the entire thing in Python, like the low level of it I did in Python without the robot framework syntax. I shaved a few milliseconds there. I maybe got it into 600 milliseconds, I think. But it's otherwise the same. So I have the same selector that I had here for inputting text, but I'm just using the JavaScript to evaluate that part in the browser. So, but yeah, so can't even remember what these arguments are anymore. I would have to check the proper docs, but it contains yes. I think those are correct. Otherwise, I have to check somewhere. And
we shouldn't get worried, like say like RPA developers like me, when you're doing this, we shouldn't worry too much about what you did here. I mean,
no. I think this is something like more to showcase the fact that if you have that domain knowledge, you have like paths to optimize things, do things differently. There's multiple ways you could approach this same problem.
Yeah, I think there's something here that every RPA developer will appreciate, though, is that we set out internally to like make this RPA challenge work. It's not difficult to do. All of us could build it, but then we said to ourselves, like, who can build this, do it like the fastest way? And then it started, like we had on our Slack internally, like we had a thread going, and somebody was posting an improvement on that, and you can see, like with that developer mindset, you start it's actually pretty satisfying to be able to optimize things, and you have room for that here. So that's, you're not like prohibited from building this kind of thing.
So Andy, while Ossi finished this, would you say that we have like 5 RPA challenges here? You don't have to show me now, but would you say that we could solve that with Robocorp, like all 5 of them?
Yes, I think I need to look at the. I know that the shortest path. Oh yeah, they went.
Nice job, Ossi.
Whoa! Ossi, congratulations in solving the RPA challenge in the new record time. Less than a second. I'm very impressed. Thanks both Ossi and Andy for giving me this full demo. The full demo will be available very soon. You can see it when it's ready up here in this corner. But also remember to subscribe to get noticed about it and other cool RPA videos. If you want to see another open source RPA tool, click the video here in this corner.